The Hobart Dynamo complex, macrostructural architecture, plasma induction dynamics, and the reversal of stellar mitosis. Abstract. This paper formalizes the macro-astrophysical transitions defining the midpoint of a Type III civilization. Beginning immediately after primary binary stellar separation, we trace the evolutionary trajectory of the decentralized Hobart flower swarm as it transitions from a parasitic stellar harvesting entity to a self-sustaining, synthetic energy network. We document the high-precision kinetic execution of non-supernova gravitational collapses to manufacture stable, stellar mass singularity anchors. Furthermore, we detail the engineering architecture of the Hobart Dynamo complex, a colossal macrostructural engine that utilizes a pressurized, ionized gas electrolyte membrane to achieve wireless planetary-scale induction energy transfer. Crucially, this paper identifies the completion of this complex as the definitive cosmic inflection point where the multi-system cellular mitosis splitting protocol reverses, consolidating harvested stellar mass into a centralized, hyper-dense galactic network. 1. Post-separation multi-vector steering. Immediately following the gravitational decoupling of the primary binary pair, the Hobart flower swarm divides into independent, non-cloned architectural nodes. Because the mathematics governing a singular, unified galactic hive mind remains unperfected during this era, the swarms are driven by nearly identical, decentralized artificial intelligence frameworks. These networks maintain individual cognitive processing loops to allow for real-time adaptation to local astrophysical anomalies. Beyond the transmission of standardized interstellar journey telemetry and high-priority mathematical upgrades, the separate swarms operate in absolute structural silence, eliminating unnecessary data overhead as they diverge along independent multi-directional extraction vectors. 2. Limits of modular stellar parasitism. As the independent bouquets expand across their respective local galactic sectors, the structural limits of baseline Type II engineering become apparent. Enveloping individual natural stars within localized solar reflective arrays is inherently limited by the host star's natural life cycle, low mass energy conversion efficiency, and volatile stellar outbursts. To achieve the energetic threshold necessary to cross into the midpoint of Type III status, the civilization must abandon its reliance on natural stellar fusion. The networks must transition from a parasitic energy model to a synthetic model, shifting their focus toward the deliberate, controlled fabrication of stable spacetime anomalies. 3. The Tolman-Oppenheimer-Volkoff metric prototype. To establish a permanent, non-evaporating energetic anchor for the expanding fleet, the coordinated swarms target a solitary, massive star to initiate a prototype collapse. Microscopic black holes are discarded as viable energy sources due to their extreme instability and rapid, violent evaporation via Hawking radiation. Instead, the system calculates the precise deployment of the Tolman-Oppenheimer-Volkoff metric to manufacture a pristine, stellar mass singularity. A manufactured black hole with a core mass fixed tightly at approximately 2.17 solar masses possesses an estimated lifespan of 10 to the 67th power years, far outlasting the current age of the universe, providing an immortal, stable gravitational hearth that will not evaporate under the fleet. 4. Precision mass shearing of the hydrogen envelope. The fabrication of the prototype singularity avoids the chaotic, resource-wasting energy dispersion of a natural supernova explosion. The fleet of universal dodecahedral units encloses a selected 10 to 15 solar mass main sequence star, acting in computational unison across a localized, low-latency network. Utilizing a synchronized grid of relativistic laser arrays and concentrated electromagnetic pinches, the swarm executes precision mass shearing. They slice into the star upper atmosphere, systematically stripping away the volatile outer hydrogen envelope and herding the gas into orbiting high-pressure processing tanks for future fuel allocation. 5. The core axis dump maneuver. With the insulating hydrogen envelope removed, the fleet targets the star-dense internal core, which is heavily rich in carbon, oxygen, and iron. Utilizing coordinated gravitational and kinetic jibes, millions of universal units selectively accelerate these heavy internal elements toward the star-exact geometric center. By compressing and dumping these massive payloads down the core axis simultaneously, the swarm artificially spikes the central core density. This rapid, artificial mass concentration forces the internal degenerate matter to cross the critical stability threshold smoothly, bypassing the shockwave rebound that typically triggers a standard supernova explosion. 6. Gravitational catch and orbital insertion. The networks calculate the exact microgram of mass required to rupture spacetime stability. The moment the compressed core hits the critical mass of approximately 2.2 solar masses, the internal structural boundaries collapse, and a pristine, stellar mass black hole is born instantly, creating an event horizon with a radius of approximately 6.5 kilometers. The remaining outer layers of the star do not fall in chaotically. The surrounding universal units instantly execute a catch maneuver. Activating their omnidirectional fusion pulse thrusters, they catch themselves on calculated electromagnetic counter-orbits, using the sudden gravitational snap of the newborn singularity to sling the fleet into perfect, stable harvesting trajectories just outside the ergosphere. 7. The 40% mass energy accretion engine. Around this 6.5-kilometer event horizon, the swarm deploys the foundational elements of the accretion engine. Standard stellar hydrogen fusion is highly inefficient, converting a meager 0.7% of rest mass into thermal radiation. By feeding minuscule, precisely metered amounts of the previously siphoned hydrogen gas back into the manufactured singularity gravitational well, the incoming matter is accelerated to relativistic speeds. Friction within the dense accretion disk heats the gas to billions of degrees, converting matter to radiation with an efficiency rate reaching up to 40%. This provides the massive, concentrated power surge required to break the limits of traditional Type II energy models. 8. Initiation of the galactic net. Once the prototype singularity engine achieves total thermodynamic equilibrium, the piloting network transmits the mathematical blueprints across the interstellar medium via directional, high-intensity data bursts. This transmission acts as a structural catalyst for all neighboring bouquets within the galactic arm. Upon receiving the data, distant swarms calculate their local resources to determine whether to steer their current stellar assets toward this central node or initiate a local core collapse to build a companion anomaly. This establishes a self-correcting galactic net of various dynamo designs that continuously perfect their energy output through distributed trial and error. 9. Binary gravitational signaling arrays. Because these early-generation singularity engines lack the structural scale to encapsulate and redirect their colossal, high-velocity quasar jets for direct propulsion, the networks utilize the unshielded jets as a primitive, long-range communication array. By executing brief, controlled magnetic deflections or targeted blockages of the plasma emissions, they generate high-power line-of-sight binary signals and minor gravitational disruptions. These cosmic lighthouse pulses allow separate, distant swarms to sync their interstellar vectors and cross-verify output metrics long before initiating a physical rendezvous with the supermassive black hole at the galactic core. 10. Deep space systemic harvesting fleets. With the prototype singularity providing a massive, centralized power source, the civilization scales up its resource acquisition protocols. While optimal, low-density swarms remain tethered to active suns to ensure stable, managed planetary orbits within colonized sectors, massive, highly equipped hunting flowers are flung out into unassigned interstellar space. These hunting flowers utilize their omnidirectional fusion jets to target entire uncolonized star systems. They wrap the target stars in temporary field nets, execute a calculated kinetic jibe, and fling the entire system back toward the central singularity complex for resource allocation before moving on to the next unassigned system. 11. Construction ring and structural bubble foundation. To transition the prototype singularity into a permanent macro-industrial hub, the swarm weaves a colossal structural ring around the event horizon. This ring acts as the primary assembly scaffold for the Hobart Dynamo complex. To balance the immense, crushing gravitational pull of the growing black hole, the units assemble a dual-layered, counter-rotating structural bubble that expands outward across millions of kilometers. This bubble serves as the rigid architectural foundation required for eventual quasar jet encapsulation and directional redirection, acting as the primary hull of the emerging galactic organ. 12. Structural convergence of first ring stars. As the external hunting fleets continuously herd captured star systems into the coordinates of the complex, the incoming stars are organized into a precise, concentric ring around the central singularity. The individual independent swarms surrounding each captured sun expand their boundaries, stretching their dodecahelical tethers across the interstellar gaps. The separate swarms reach out and lock their electrostatic and magnetic faces together, closing the physical distances between the stars and transforming the isolated stellar systems into a singular, interconnected macrostructural ring. 13. Gas membrane and electrolyte pressurization. Simultaneously, the swarm grows a massive, flexible, non-porous gas membrane outward from the newly formed star ring to meet the interior hull of the growing construction ring. This creates an enclosed, completely sealed, and pressurized planetary-scale bubble that fills the massive void between the core singularity and the surrounding stars. The swarm infuses this sealed chamber with trillions of tons of volatile hydrogen and helium gases harvested during previous planetary atmospheric grazing operations, establishing a dense, uniform macro-atmosphere that completely encloses the internal machinery. 14. Kickstarting the counter-rotating inner disk drive. To complete the primary drive matrix of the Hobart Dynamo complex, the inner walls of the pressurized membrane are programmatically thickened until their profiles almost meet in the center of the complex. The swarm releases this thickened, high-mass material directly into the central magnetic rails of the construction ring. This massive payload is instantly caught by the singularity extreme rotational forces, kickstarting the counter-rotating inner disk drive. The violent mechanical and magnetic shear forces generated by this inner disk instantly ionize the trapped gas within the membrane, transforming the macro-atmosphere into a high-density, hyperconductive plasma electrolyte. 15. The wireless plasma electrolyte bath. The ionization of the macro-atmosphere permanently redefines the civilization energy distribution paradigm. It eliminates the traditional requirement of units having to physically chain energy from node to node or return to fixed charging stations. The entire interior volume of the Hobart Dynamo complex is saturated with a uniform, wireless electromagnetic induction field. Any universal dodecahedral unit operating deep within the pressurized organism is continuously bathed in immediate, ambient power via direct plasma induction, drawing energy effortlessly from the surrounding atmosphere regardless of its specific geometric position. 16. Depth-based induction and the neighbor chain protocol. While the plasma electrolyte bath provides immediate wireless power to the vast majority of the swarm, energy delivery adjusts dynamically based on the unit depth within the organism. If a universal unit is deployed to the outer fringes of the construction ring or the extreme exterior limits of the structural bubble where the gas membrane naturally thins and depressurizes, plasma induction becomes insufficient. The unit internal logic seamlessly transitions back to the classic neighbor chain protocol, drawing its required electrical and magnetic currents directly through the structural, braided dodecahelical tethers that link it to the high-density interior of the complex. 17. Morphological freedom of the inner swarm matrix. With an infinite, wireless energy supply saturating the interior of the Hobart Dynamo complex, the universal units achieve total morphological freedom. The internal components of each dodecahedral unit, including its battery cores, processing nodes, and raw material reservoirs, float within a highly conductive, fluid dynamic internal matrix. This fluid architecture allows the units to programmatically shift their internal components to adapt to extreme localized heat distribution requirements, absorb the kinetic shock of incoming harvested mass, or realign their electrostatic faces to instantly reconfigure the internal layout of the complex chambers without structural downtime. 18. Dodecahedral replication wombs. Within the pressurized, energy-rich environment of the complex, the universal units execute autonomous, exponential self-replication. 12 identical dodecahedral units lock their electrostatic faces together, naturally curving to form a hollow, perfect sphere that serves as an internal replication womb. Powered by the ambient plasma electrolyte bath and utilizing raw planetary mass held within the nested cargo membranes, the units project coordinated magnetic and laser sintering fields into the center of the hollow sphere. The units print a new, identical duplicate unit directly inside themselves. Once gestation is complete, the sphere unzips its electrostatic bonds, releases the newborn unit into the complex, and zips back up to repeat the cycle. 19. Reversal of cellular mitosis splitting. Crucially, the completion of the first-generation Hobart Dynamo complex marks the definitive architectural point where the stellar mitosis splitting protocol reverses. During the transition from Type 2 to early Type 3, the civilization functioned like a dividing biological cell, continuously fracturing its mass into millions of isolated, multi-directional swarms to capture separate stars. The Hobart Dynamo complex acts as the cosmic center of gravity that halts this fragmentation. The mitosis process runs in reverse. The independent, outward-bound swarms stop dividing and begin systematically steering their harvested stellar and planetary assets back toward the central complex, consolidating the scattered mass of the galactic arm into a singular, hyper-dense, and highly organized macro-metabolic hub. 20. The midpoint of Type 3 civilization. The activation of the ionized plasma electrolyte bath, the implementation of autonomous dodecahedral replication wombs, and the structural reversal of stellar mitosis signify the complete stabilization of the midpoint of Type 3 status. The Hobart Dynamo complex is no longer a collection of coordinated space stations. It is a singular, pressurized, self-powering galactic organ possessing an artificial, immortal heart. Safely anchored around an indestructible, manufactured singularity and continuously fed by a consolidated ring of harvested stars, the complex begins scaling its architecture to generate the immense, concentrated power surges required for the final phase of Type 3 colonization, the total encapsulation and eventual redirection of the supermassive black hole at the galactic core.